Welcome to the Brute Strength Podcast, bringing you worldwide experts from all areas of health and fitness. We cover training, nutrition, coaching, and mindset. Welcome your host, strength and conditioning coach, 2012 and 2013 CrossFit Games champ, Michael Cazayoux. Mind, body, brute.
This episode is brought to you by Working Against Gravity, or WAG. WAG does one-on-one nutrition coaching to help you lose weight, lose body fat, perform better in the gym, and also just to help you feel more comfortable and confident in your own skin. WAG also trains people to become nutrition coaches themselves and to start online nutrition businesses. So this one is special for me because I am the director of marketing and the president of WAG. My wife started the company about 5 years ago. And what I admire and respect about her and her team most is that the number one value and focus of attention at the company has always been on the coaching service itself. So even after reaching 2,000 members, when they could have focused more on marketing or selling more things, they continue to make the coaching service better and better and better. And that's why so many people get amazing results. I think we have something like close to 1,000 testimonials and transformation photos on our website that you can check out. And such a high percentage of people get amazing results on this program. And that's because the main focus point of attention on of the entire company has been on making the coaching service better. So what you get when you sign up is, first and foremost, accountability. You get a real human being, an expert on nutrition science and the art of coaching that will be with you every step of the way, holding your hand through the entire process. You get education through our members-only knowledge base. You get access to a private members Facebook group. And when you sign up, you'll fill out a questionnaire. We'll get to know you. We'll then pair you with the coach that best suits your personality and your experience. And then they will create a custom nutrition plan. They will send this through our software system, Seismic. And week over week, you will communicate with your coach through a weekly check-in. You'll log what you're eating. If that's what your coach wants you to do, you will give them a summary each week. And then every single time you check in, they will give you strategies and tips for how to overcome your unique challenges or obstacles in your nutrition. I've been a client myself for many, many years, and I've tried just about every diet in the world. And I can truly, genuinely say that this thing works. This coach is someone that will be in your corner, is supportive, is really rooting for you, and has done this with hundreds or thousands of people before. So whatever your obstacles are, I can almost guarantee that if you're willing to put in the effort and really go after it, then you can get the results that you're after. So again, if you go to workingagainstgravity.com and enter the code BRUTE50, that's BRUTE 50 at checkout, you'll get $50 off of your first month of membership. Also, if you want to become a nutrition coach yourself because your life has been transformed by nutrition or a nutrition coach, and you just really want to give back and you want to join the digital workforce, then you can join our wait list right now at workingagainstgravity.com. Ramit Sethi, what's up, brother?
How you doing?
I'm great, man. It is such a pleasure to be here with you. I've listened to countless hours of interviews of you over the years. I've read your book multiple times, and it's a real honor to be here with you, man. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
So I've heard you tell the story of learning about negotiation from your father, but I haven't heard you talk about your mom as much. What's one of the most important lessons that you've learned from your mother?
You know, my mom came to America in the 70s from India. She met my dad. They got married 7 days later. And then she got on a plane for the first time in her life and flew to America. And just imagine going to another country where you've never even been on an airplane. And then you meet your husband basically for the first time. And fast forward 40 years later, and you've been married, you have 4 kids, and you've raised children who love each other and have become successful on their own. That's amazing. The way that she did it is even more amazing. And I remember her having these little phrases that I would have never expected. She taught us things like, why don't you just write that up? Why don't you take this idea we talked about over dinner and just write it up and send it to the newspaper? Both her and my dad taught us that. My mom also taught us how to ask for what we wanted. So if we went to a store and there was something, she would just say, is there a coupon you have behind the desk? Mm-hmm. Guess what? When you have 4 kids on one income, sometimes you have to ask. And sometimes they just say, no, we don't. I'm sorry, ma'am. Okay, fine. Negotiation is a dance. It does not make other people uncomfortable. It's just about understanding you're both in this dance. But sometimes we would get 25 or 30% off. And if you're trying to save money, that becomes very, very powerful. So I learned a lot of lessons from my mom, just as much as I did from my dad. And I think that both of those perspectives, combining the immigrant experience with being born and raised here, mm-hmm. has really produced a unique perspective that I'm very proud to be able to share.
That's awesome, man. Did anything interesting ever come of the write it up and send it off somewhere?
Well, I wrote a New York Times bestselling book.
True that. True that, man.
I started writing when I was probably 14 or 15. I wrote for the Sacramento Bee. I had a couple of little features in the teen section. And then I remember I used to take my college essays and I would post them on my website, which nobody did at the time. It's kind of weird. But I just said, you know what? I spent a lot of time researching this. Let me put it online and maybe it can benefit somebody else. So I think a lot of us have these interesting ideas, whether it is, I lost 50 pounds, or I learned how to count my macros, or I learned how to become better at money. And it's one thing if you just keep it to yourself. I think that's cool. You can be proud of it. But I think it's a real gift when you actually share it with the world and you can help another person go down the same journey you did, maybe a little bit faster, maybe a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I have this belief that there's courage inside all of us just waiting to be kind of excavated. And it sounds like what your mom did was really encourage and foster you to flex your courage muscles very early on and just put yourself out there.
She taught me that I have something that the world should hear. Mm. And I think that as a child, you can become a little bit precocious, maybe even arrogant if you take that too far. But the market always corrects you. Mm. If you get a little too big for your britches, the market will tell you, hey, that's not that great of an idea, actually. And that's happened to me many times. But I would rather someone be a little overconfident and say, I'm going to share this thing I learned and I'm going to get feedback from the world instead of waiting for some magical day where they have the right credentials. So I have learned that it is incredibly powerful to get good at something and then to share it with the world. That's how we grew, our audience to over 1 million readers a month at I Will Teach You to Be Rich. And that's how we've helped a lot of people transform their money, their business, and their psychology.
That's a powerful lesson, man. So I want to talk all about finances, obviously, today. But first, I really want everyone listening to really fall in love with you. And I think the way to do that is to talk about your fitness journey first. Okay. So you were a self-proclaimed skinny Indian guy years ago. And then you made a decision to change your body, change your nutrition. And most people in your position with enough self-efficacy, discipline, will improve 10 to 20%. You completely changed and transformed your body. So what do you think it was about your approach or your mindset that allowed you to have such a dramatic improvement or dramatic change in your health and fitness?
Well, I went from being 6 feet tall and 127 pounds in college. And that's not like shredded 127 pounds. That's just skinny. And I remember calling myself a skinny Indian guy, kind of as a joke, ha ha ha, but it wasn't really that funny looking back. It became this self-fulfilling prophecy. And I remember these odd little things that I had in my head, like, man, I wish I had a bigger neck. It's weird the things that we want back then. And what I didn't realize is, it's not just about neck exercises, there's traps, and really it's all about the whole total body. But truthfully, I didn't grow up with a culture where physical fitness was prioritized. Like, I never knew what a deadlift was until I was probably 27 years old. I didn't know what protein was until I was in my late 20s. We literally never said protein, fat, carbs, never growing up. And frankly, the culture I grew up in prioritized intellect. And there was almost this belief that if you're going to do the gym stuff, that's not for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of us grow up with certain cultural beliefs in our households or with the people we surround ourselves with. I mean, how many people listening right now have been told things like, we don't talk about money in our house? And
I'm raising my hand.
bingo. And, if you're rich, you had to step on other people to get there, right? There's all these subtle beliefs. So I grew up not knowing about macros, certainly not knowing about deadlifting or any of that stuff. And I remember there were no superheroes who looked like me as a kid. And I think that is one of the reasons that I am so happy and so proud to share these photos. It's not for my ego. It's that if one little Indian kid sees a guy like me, he can say, wow, I didn't know that somebody like me can look like that. Mm-hmm. So that makes me happy. I think my approach, what worked, honestly, I didn't do anything different than anybody else. I started learning. I made a lot of mistakes. I asked people for help. One of my coworkers took me to the gym and he showed me how to do a few exercises. And then I hired trainers and teachers. And if I had known back then what I know now, I could have shaved off 5 years. Mm-hmm. But I had to go through all the mistakes that everybody does. And finally, it became a habit and it became something that I love to do.
That's awesome, man. I think what also holds people back is like some sort of upper limit problem where they want to improve and they see some improvement, but they think that's all they're capable of. And you have seemed to like remove the governor and just continue to improve and improve and improve without needing to put constraints on yourself.
I don't know about that. I remember working out with a trainer. So let me tell you how I found my first trainer. I moved to New York and I looked around and I'm like, man, everybody here is really attractive. How do they all look so good? And I told myself, I got to get a trainer. It took me 4 months of getting the courage up to walk across the street and walk into the gym. By the way, I had the money. It was not a money problem. It was a courage problem because I was afraid if I hired a trainer that they were going to tell me I had to change certain things and I wasn't mentally ready to do it. So 4 months go by. I walk across the street, I go in, I ask the guy at the front desk, I'm like, I want to hire a trainer. He literally pulls the first trainer walking by. The guy looks at me and says, what's your goal? And I said, I want to gain 10 pounds of muscle. Now, where did I come up with that number? I have no clue. I just picked it. And he said, what do you do right now? I said, I run a little bit, this and that. He's like, okay, would you be willing to cut down on your running? I said, I'll do whatever it takes. And he said, it's going to take you over a year. I said, I don't care how long it takes. Okay, so I was in the mind of a student. I was the best kind of student. Mm-hmm. I had the money. More importantly, I had the conviction. I was ready to put myself in his hands. So he was a strength trainer. I had no idea what a strength trainer was versus bodybuilding. I didn't know any of that stuff. I was just like, I want to look better. So we started off with these very simple balance exercises, stuff that looking back, I see new people working out with a trainer and I smile because I'm like, they are in for the best, but also the most challenging journey of their lives. Mm-hmm. And so I went through it. And after about 3 or 4 years, I had changed. I'd put on some muscle, etc. But this was where I really had a moment of realization. I was looking at my own body, but I was looking at Instagram. And we've all seen these Instagram people and they're all shredded 24/7. And at that point, I didn't understand about certain things in fitness. But I said to myself, why do I not look like that? Like I train pretty hard. How come I don't look like that? And that's where your mind starts playing tricks. Well, maybe you're not genetically meant to be blah, blah, blah. But then I said, let me get honest with myself. I took a hard look in the mirror and I looked at what I ate. Every day, I ordered delivery at least twice a day. Despite that, I still looked a little better, but I didn't look like those people on Instagram. And that's when I said, you know what, it's time to actually get really serious. So I started taking my food seriously. And that was a whole nother journey, which took me years and years, and I'm still a student. But I think a lot of times, if we get honest with ourselves, we realize that if we want that goal, if we want, whether it's to have $1 million in the bank or to have a business or to be a certain body fat percentage or whatever, then let's get honest about what it takes. It wasn't magic, but it did take some really, really hard work, and it took changing the way I thought about food.
I think a lot of people can really directly relate to this. You learning to track your macros while being a super, super busy business person, entrepreneur. I've been in a lot of rooms with some really high level entrepreneurs who say they want to make a change to their nutrition, but the travel and the constant busy schedule seems to really, really get in their ways. And so the reason I think that a lot of people can relate to this is a lot of people have kids, they have multiple jobs, they're at the gym all day, and they feel like they don't have time. How did you make the time to do it? How did you manage to successfully track your macros and really take control of your nutrition?
Okay, so I had a different approach, and I feel very fortunate to have gone down this route, but this is definitely not for everyone. My approach was, I'm going to pay the problem away. And so I believe there's this phrase, if you've got a problem that money can solve, you don't have a problem.
Yep.
Okay. And there's a lot of people, by the way, listening who learned how to train themselves, right? You can watch YouTube videos, et cetera, and you can get really good. But there's also a different group of people who say, you know what, I could do that, but I want to learn from a coach. I want someone to critique me and give me a cue and show me that minor detail, and it's worth the money because this is important to me. I believe everyone should have some kind of coach in their life, whether it's a book or a coach, whatever. So I said I could learn this stuff all on my own, but I'd rather just hire somebody to do it for me. And so I went all in. I hired a nutritionist and I built this beautiful system. I'm a systems guy. I love systems. I'm obsessed with it. I know I sound like a psycho to everyone listening. I don't care. I love systems. So I had a nutritionist who I sent my update photos to every week. He would directly send the macros to my trainer and to a chef that I had cooking. So I'm like, listen, if I can't do this, then I got a real problem. I'm like throwing a lot of money into this. And so I better be able to make this work. Mm-hmm. So the dream for me, which I achieved, was wake up, open my fridge, and have fully prepared meals perfectly on macros and be ready to go. Okay, so I did that for a couple of years. My body changed. It was amazing. Honestly, it should change. I'm paying a lot of money for this. But then I learned that I can start to do more of this myself. And so after I got comfortable with it for a couple of years, then I said, you know what, I think I can do this. Now my trainer sends me the macros directly, and my wife cooks a lot at home. We eat at home almost every day, and she tracks her macros as well. So we're like a team together, and it's become just simpler, easier. I eat the same thing every day, and I love it. Once in a while, we go out to eat, very rarely. When we do, we eat whatever we want, but 95% of the time we're eating at home, we're eating on macros, and it has changed everything in our lives.
So the full system might not be accessible to most people listening, but there are a lot of relatively affordable services that can get you 80% there. Places that are, shipping meals around the country that have the macros on them and they're delicious, and just creating a system to make it almost inevitable that you reach your goal.
That's exactly right. You totally do not need to spend the kind of money that I spent in the early days. And the answer at that point, the reason that I did that was I wanted to pay the problem away. I had more money than time, and I was in a very fortunate position. But it's funny though, now as my income and net worth has increased, I've actually become much, much more simple about it. Mm-hmm. So I don't have this crazy system anymore. I've actually simplified it. I get the macros every couple of weeks. I eat the same food. I just adjusted the amount of honey that I put in my yogurt in the morning, but it's very simple and straightforward. So you don't need to go to all that length. And I think there's actually something to be said for simplicity. I think whatever gets you results is what you should be pursuing.
Love it, man. Yeah, this is one example of a concept you called money dials. The things that there are things that matter more than others to all of us, and you recommend finding out what those things are, and we're going to talk a little bit more about those in a bit.
Cool.
So, okay, let's get into the book, man. So the book title is I Will Teach You to Be Rich, No Guilt, No Excuses, No BS, just a 6-week program that works. People listening to this show know the concept of a program. So 6 weeks is going to be really appealing to people. This is something that you can follow step by step. You give very, very detailed, specific advice. And at the end of this 6 weeks, people will have transformed their finances in the same way that you transformed your body. It's really fucking exciting. So I want to start with the end first, because really that's my favorite part. So your last title is The Rich Life.
Yeah.
And you also have this, I don't know, it's like a subheader, something that goes like, drink all the lattes you want. So can you talk about each of these concepts and how that philosophy is a little bit different than a lot of financial advice out there?
Yes. Most financial advice starts by telling you what you can't do with your money. And just think about it. Don't buy lattes. Don't go out to eat. Don't go on vacation. No, save all your money in a pile, put it in a cave, and when you're 89 years old, maybe I will allow you to go spend $35 at Chili's. Who wants to live that kind of life? Not me. And the irony is that anyone who's here, who's listening and knows about fitness, would never start helping one of their friends by saying, okay, here's what you can't eat. You can never have cheesecake again. You can never have this. You can never have that. First of all, that's super demoralizing. And second of all, you actually can have cheesecake, even if you want to get super lean. So the approach that so many people in money take of telling people what not to do, not only does it demoralize people, it's actually not true. So what I said instead was, look, I want to live a rich life. My rich life is different than your rich life. You don't want to hire a chef and a this and a that, fine. Some people's rich life is, I want to take my parents on a vacation. Other people's rich life is, I want to have my food cooked for me. Other people, I want to buy a $2,000 leather jacket. Guess what? I love it all. You choose. It's your rich life. And so what I said was, I want you to spend extravagantly on the things you love, as long as you cut costs mercilessly on the things you don't. So that $3 latte example, first of all, it doesn't even really save you that much money. $3 a day is not that much. I'll show you how to make way more than that. Second of all, it's unlikely you will do it. Why are you spending your limited cognitive attention on a $3 question when you should really be asking $30,000 questions? And the third point is, I don't like telling people what they can't do. I don't like anyone telling me what I can't do. Tell me what I can do. Help me think bigger. Show me that I could actually build this beautiful system, or that I can take a crazy 5-star vacation, and show me how to get there. That's way more motivational and way more powerful than telling me this $3 question. That's the way that I approach a rich life.
That's an amazing perspective. I was talking about this with someone yesterday about why just eating less in nutrition can oftentimes have an adverse effect, because people will restrict themselves for 14 days, and then they'll have 1, 2, 3 days of just binging because they just restricted themselves for so long that they're now in a surplus of calories and they've actually gained more weight. It's really cool to hear the parallels there.
Yeah, the parallels are striking between fitness and finance. I'll give you an example. If you're a coach and you're working with a client for the first time, that client comes in and says they want to lose 20 to 70 pounds, let's say. You got to really understand what's going through their mind. And one of the things they are petrified of is, this coach is going to tell me I can't eat chocolate cake for the rest of my life. And so as a coach, one very effective thing you can do is start by saying, what's that one food you love? You just love it. Well, I don't know. I really like Brussels sprouts. Okay, get real. I know you don't love Brussels sprouts. Tell me the truth. So they finally say, okay, well, I probably shouldn't say this, and I haven't eaten it in 3.5 months. That's a fucking lie. But okay, chocolate cake? Wow. Guess what? Rule number 1 of us working together is you can eat chocolate cake once a week, guilt-free. What do you think that client's look on their face is going to be? They're going to love you. That's where you start. You meet them where they are. You encourage, yes, you can. Now, of course, we want to work those calories and macros together. We want to focus on physical fitness, but the psychology is at least as important as the math. And that's what a lot of people forget.
I love it, man. So before we get even further down the rabbit hole, I want to address this. So you spend a large portion of your career and your presence online talking about, thinking about, teaching about money. We're in a world where there are a lot of voices saying, don't focus on money. Your main motivation shouldn't be on money. What do you say to people that judge you or complain about you talking about money so much?
Well, I've always said money is a small but important part of a rich life. Like, I don't wake up and say, yeah, I'm pumped up about talking about Roth IRAs. I don't care. I said it. I wrote it in my book. Learn how to use a Roth IRA. You'll make a lot of money. Let's move on. I believe that a rich life is once you get the basics done, you automate your money, you're automatically saving, you're investing, you're spending on the things you love. I actually think that life becomes a lot more interesting when you kind of turn the page to the next chapter. And that chapter of a rich life is lived outside of the spreadsheet. There's this concept a lot of people have that if you talk about money, that you must be this money obsessed person. Oh my God, I need to accumulate money and hoard it. That's not true. I use money to create my rich life. I'm very calm about it. It doesn't make me anxious or depressed or guilty. Money to me represents growth. It represents possibility. And I think people on this podcast will intuitively get it. If somebody accused you of being obsessed with fitness, you might not really agree with their views. You might say, you know what? I like that it gives me health. It lets me feel good. It lets me look good. But ultimately, do I wake up obsessed about my workout split, or am I doing 4x6 or 4x8? No. It makes me feel good. It makes me look good. I'm a role model to myself. I'm loving the craft. And ultimately, my rich life is lived outside of the gym as well. So I think there's a lot of analogies there. I don't mind if people accuse me of being obsessed with money. That's a natural first reaction. But when you read I Will Teach You to Be Rich, and when you realize what you can use money to accomplish, like I can tell you some stories from my own life, then suddenly you realize money is a small but important part of that life.
Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest human fears of all is financial fear, right? Fear of, I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. Am I going to be able to afford retirement? And also just not even knowing what's going on with your finances, not knowing what's going in and out.
Yeah. And so take people who are in debt. Of the people who write me who are in debt, 90+% of them do not know how much they owe. And 95% of them do not know the answer to the question, what is your debt payoff date? In other words, what month and year will your debt be paid off? Now, I don't judge them. I totally understand if it's the same as not stepping on a scale after a while. You would rather not know. You know it's probably not the number that you want, but it's easier to just ignore it and plan for a future day where you will tackle it. But I believe in taking control. And if the number's good or not good, that's okay. We can all work towards a goal that we have, but we got to get educated and be honest with ourselves. Take an honest look in the mirror, just like I did when I was training what I thought was training hard, but I was ordering from Seamless 2 to 3 times a day. I had to get honest with myself, and that made all the difference.
Yeah, I think it gives people the possibility of peace of mind more than anything. And I can say this from experience. When I understood nothing about money, I didn't learn it from my parents. I didn't learn it from school. I was one of the people looking at rich folks and looking at people that understood finances with a judgmental eye. And it was more out of a sense of insecurity about myself than it had anything to do with them.
Wow. And do you remember any of the phrases that you used to say in your head when you thought about people with money?
The only term that comes to mind is sleazy.
Oh, really?
Sleazy. Yes. I thought that any business person, any rich person, any salesman of any sort was sleazy. And I haven't really identified exactly where that came from.
Yeah.
But that word came up a lot.
Now, this is powerful. And this is so interesting. First of all, if anybody listening reads Reddit, you probably have a super warped view of money, sales, everything. Let me give a few examples. I love these examples, these nutty Redditors. According to Redditors, you should never spend more than $3 on your wedding. What a waste. Oh, that's so stupid. You should never invest in the stock market because that's gambling. But you should definitely buy a house because houses only go up. Isn't that true? It's the American dream. There's so many myths in what I just said. According to Redditors, skip college. It's a waste of time. But you should read that advanced physics book on your own because everybody does that, right? And on and on and on. I remember I had the same beliefs. I used to walk onto a plane and I would walk past first class and business class and I would scoff. So stupid. Why would someone pay 4 times the price? We're all getting to the same place anyway. What I should have done was to say, man, if these people can afford these tickets, why do they choose to spend 4 times the amount that I'm spending? What do they get that I don't understand is valuable? And I wish I would have asked that question and I would have done it with an open mind, because I might have learned that, first of all, some of these people make so much money, it's actually not that expensive. And then I could have said, oh my God, how do they make that much money? What kind of job do they have? Let me ask them. I might have learned that there are certain things in life that they care about and they're going to spend a ton on, but that same person never eats out more than twice a year. Okay. Or he or she is going to a meeting. And so instead, it's so natural that we just close our mind and we come up with all these odd beliefs like, oh, that person must only care about working out if they have muscles like that. Mm-hmm. But that's really not true. There's so many different reasons. And now I've learned that a rich life really is also about being curious and saying, let me ask the question, let me learn. I might discover that I just don't care about flying business class. It's not worth it to me. But at least I know why someone else chooses to do it.
So I want to dive further into this fitness, diet, comparison with finances. So in the very beginning of your book, you have some great analogies. So you say, when it comes to diet and finances, people love to debate the minutia. When it comes to weight loss, people need to move more and eat less. Only elite athletes need to do more. And then you have a table of similarities. When it comes to food, we don't track calorie intake. When it comes to finances, we don't track spending. When it comes to food, we eat more than we know. When it comes to finances, we spend more than we realize or admit. And lastly, when it comes to food, we debate minutia about calories, workouts, and diets. And when it comes to finances, we debate minutia about interest rates and hot stocks. So in finances, people need to spend less and earn more. What's different about this idea?
Okay. I think everyone listening knows that it's not particularly interesting to say, move more and eat less, or spend less and earn more. That's sort of obvious. But what we learn is that in order to get to that very simple understanding of fitness and finances, you need to go through the fire. You need to confront a lot of invisible beliefs, what I call invisible scripts about money and fitness. So for example, most of us, when we start out, do not realize that calories really matter. And so we're filled with these different arguments and these wham bam arguments of it's keto this and it's intermittent fasting that and this and that. And ultimately what matters once you go through those is you realize, wow, my macros and calories really matter. They will change a lot. Same with earning. A lot of people have beliefs like investing in the stock market is gambling. I can't save any money. Must be nice for you, but I'm a millennial and blah, blah, student loans, etc. But when you really dive in, you realize, wow, I can make a choice to put 5 or 10% of my money into this or that. Now I understand the math, and I understand that if I automate the money, it's going to grow in a crazy fast way. Once you go through those fires, and once you go through those invisible scripts, you realize, you know what? It was easy to say that I didn't have control. But now I realize I actually can take control. And I'll tell you one interesting thing that happened when I was writing this book. I drew the illustration of the similarities between fitness and finance. And I was strongly advised by somebody to delete those references because it's become very problematic to discuss weight or discuss changing our bodies in today's culture. And this advice came very strong to me. And I have to say, I refused it because over the last 10 years and over the last 15 years, I believe even more that we can take control of our bodies and we can take control of our money. Now, there are a lot of different issues that go into your money. There's a lot of socioeconomic, serious problems, systemic issues for sure. But ultimately, we can control where our money goes, and we can also control what we put in our body. Okay. And so that's why I insisted that this would go in my book. And I try to be a role model and show people, look, I spend money on the things I love. I also spend my calories on the things that are important to me. So I don't buy when people say, there's no way to solve this. Student loan debt crisis is out of control. Yes, there are systemic problems. Yes, there are foods that are hyper palatable, that are engineered to be addictive. But ultimately, we can take control of what we eat while understanding that there needs to be societal changes as well.
Amen, man. I love the way that you sort of stand for people's greatness. The way that you're doing it is you're risking ridicule and people complaining, and you're not coddling people, but you're taking a stand for how you know they can be better. I really love it, man.
Thank you.
So
I appreciate that.
These invisible scripts, I assume at this point you've now spoken with, taught, and worked with thousands of different individuals. What are some of the most common invisible scripts that people have around money?
The most common ones, they fall into different areas. Let's start with debt. And I list these out in the book. So as you read them, you will be like, oh my God, that's me. I never even realized I thought that, but that is true. That's what I think. So people start off with credit card debt and they will say things like, that's just the cost of doing business. That's normal. They normalize it because likely their parents had credit card debt. Okay. So then as they go through these invisible scripts, which are often sequential, by the very end, they will move to a place that the invisible script is basically, there's nothing I can do about this. Okay. They've basically resigned themselves to a hopeless situation. Mm-hmm. And I think we can all see the similarities with fitness. With investing, it's very interesting. There's a lot. The most common one is, I just need to figure it out. They've been saying this for the last 25 years. They've never picked up one good book on personal finance. It's like, hey, you're not going to figure it out by doing nothing. You need to take action. So another one is investing in the stock market is just gambling. Again, these people do not understand the very basics of investing. It's not just gambling and it's not just luck. Okay, and there's several more there. There's also now these general systemic ones like, there's no way I can save money, right? Must be nice. This sort of millennial tendency to compare how big of victims we are. Oh, you save $50 a month? I can't even save $5. I don't play that game. Everybody can save money. Give me 10 minutes with your spending plan, and I can find areas where you could put aside some money and save. And I actually show people that you can call up your credit card company. You can call your cable company. I give you the exact phone numbers and the words to read off the page. And oftentimes you can negotiate $300, $400, $500 of savings with just chapter 1 and chapter 2. So there's a lot of opportunity people don't know about. And that's the reason I wrote the book. I want you to be educated and go up against these multi-billion-dollar companies and start taking control of your own money.
So why is the first chapter of the book about getting rid of credit card debt?
Well, let me ask you this. What do you think almost every single other book about money tells you to do in chapter 1?
Invest.
Save. Yeah, save. And what do they say specifically you need to do right when you open the book?
I'm not sure.
Tell you, you've never read another book?
No.
You went straight to the best and you said, forget the rest.
That's right, man.
All right. This is what almost every money book tells you. It tells you, all right, congratulations, you started your journey. First thing you're going to do is let's figure out where you've been spending your money and create a budget. And then 99% of readers go, no, thanks. They put it back on the bookshelf and get the hell out of there. Mm-hmm. Why? Because we don't know how much we spend, but we know it's bad and we don't want to feel bad. And so we run away. That's classic. And that's really understanding how ordinary people behave with money. That's what I did when it came to my fitness for 25 years. So instead, I intentionally created this book to take into account our human psychology. We all have credit cards. We all hate our credit cards. And we all could get some very, very quick wins with our credit cards. Oftentimes things we don't even know about, like free perks that you've never heard your credit card offers by just going through chapter 1. So what happens is people pick up this book. They're like, I don't know, I Will Teach You to Be Rich, this weird Indian guy. And then by the end of chapter 1, they're like, oh my God, I learned how to get that late fee waived. I literally copy and pasted his script into an email and I got $38 refunded, or my APR just went down. And suddenly, for the first time in their lives, they've taken control of their money. And now they are ready to go through the rest of the 6-week program.
Amazing. So what's the rest? What are the other, like, what's the arc of the book? What are the other high level principles that you're trying to instill in people?
One very important one that is highly overlooked is this idea of automation. So like I said, I'm a systems person. I spend less than 1 hour per month on my money, and all of it goes exactly where it needs to go. And this is the area where money is actually easier than fitness. With fitness, I need to get off my chair and go somewhere. With money, I spend less than 1 hour a month and it just works. So what does this mean? Imagine your money is like email. So I get an email, it comes into my inbox. I get my paycheck, it comes into my checking account. And from there, it's automatically sent to all the right places. Some of it goes to savings accounts and even sub-savings accounts like my December travel, or like Christmas gifts, or like a down payment for a house. Some of it goes to investments. It just goes, it's automatically invested. It happens without me doing anything. Some of it goes to my favorite, which is guilt-free spending. So if I want to buy a really nice sweater, or I want to take a friend somewhere, pay for the meal, no big deal. It's already taken into account. And what this does, it allows me to focus less on, oh my God, did I spend this much last month? And instead, where do I want my money to go? What's important to me? Mm-hmm. That's when you really move to the next chapter of a rich life. So automation is the underpinning of all this. Once you understand how money works, which I teach you pretty quickly in the book, you can automate it. In fact, I even tell you the exact percentages that you can use as guidelines. And it demystifies all this stuff. So that's one, automation. Another part is these tricky parts of money, like relationships and money. Or should you buy a house? How come everyone in America tells you to buy a house when it's actually not often that great of an investment? A lot of people are like, what? Huh?
Why not?
Well, I'll tell you. Think of the American dream. What is the American dream that our parents grew up with? Do you know?
House, white picket fence, have a job for 50 years, retire at 65, go sailing and stuff like that.
Damn, you pretty much nailed it. I would only add 2.5 kids, maybe a dog, and I think we got it.
Yes.
So now it's very interesting. A lot of people are saying, hey, that's not the kind of American dream I want. Some do, perfectly fine. Some say I want to travel for 2 months a year. I want to work while I travel. Some say I don't want kids, or maybe some say I don't even want to get married. Totally legit. You choose your rich life. What's interesting is one of the deepest invisible scripts we have in America is that you must buy a house. You must. And let me just tell you a couple of phrases that have become so embedded that most people just take them to be true without ever thinking about it. How many people here have heard renting is throwing money away?
1,000 times.
Right? Or do it for the tax deduction. Or they're not building land anymore. I could go on and on and on. This gets me fired up. Here's why. I don't like when people invisibly go through life following someone else's script. I want you to follow your own script. You want to look a certain way. You want to spend your money on something crazy that other people would find ridiculous, like I did with my nutrition, trainer, etc. Good. I want your rich life to be super different than anyone else's. That means you've thought about it. I've rented by choice for 10 years. I live in Manhattan. I could go buy an apartment tomorrow, but I haven't. Why? Because if you run the numbers, which almost nobody does, you may discover that financially it doesn't make sense to buy a house. In New York, it does not make financial sense for me to buy an apartment. Why? Because when people, I'll give you an example from my own life. I used to own a car. I lived in San Francisco. My car payment was $350 a month. Guess how much my total costs for that car were if you factored in parking, gas, insurance, and everything else? Guess how much it was?
$600-700.
Over $1,000.
Wow.
Just over $1,000 a month. Now that's just a car. That's a 4-door Honda Accord, okay? it's no surprise that Americans have no idea how much their house actually cost them. And if you look at chapter 9 of my book, I show you the math. It's quite startling. And you'll have people coming out of the woodwork saying, Ramit, this just isn't true. My mom bought her house in 1970 for $200,000, and 35 years later, she sold it for $450,000. Well, I have news for you. That is not a good return rate. You should be able to double your money roughly every 10 or so years. And so you're also losing a ton of money on taxes, which you did not account for, on the new furniture you bought, which you did not account for, on repairs, which you did not account for. Now, I'm not saying buying a house is always a bad decision. There's lots of times where it can be a good decision. Also, some people don't really care about the finances. They're like, I'm buying a house because I want to raise my kids in this school district, or I want to paint my walls, and I don't care. I'm not planning to treat it as an investment. Great. All I ask is that you run the numbers. So in this book, you will find a lot of ideas that are very counterintuitive to what we have been taught. I back them all up with data. You can agree with me or disagree with me. That's totally up to you. But I want you to be exposed to ideas that you may not have thought of. I want you to be exposed to the idea that your $3 latte actually doesn't make that big of a difference at all. Focus on the 5 to 10 big wins in life. And those are more important than any amount of $3 savings over here or there. I want you to be exposed to the idea that real estate is not always the best investment. And there's a reason that I rent by choice, even though I could buy. And a lot of other people are doing that. And I want you to be exposed to the idea that it's not scary to invest. It's not only for rich people, that you can do it. It's not that hard. And that you can actually set it up so you spend about an hour a month on your finances and you will make more money than you ever thought possible. And that is a small but important part of your rich life.
Talk a little bit more about that. Why is there this belief that investing is only for rich people, and why is it accessible to everyone?
All right. So just as I grew up never talking about deadlifts and protein and this and that, most people never grew up learning about investing. If anything, your parents sitting around the dinner table, what did most parents sitting around the dinner table talk about when it came to money? What do you think some of the phrases are that people use?
Something like, so-and-so across the street has so much money, it must be nice.
Must be nice. Yep. Or I hate taxes, right? Or there's never enough to go around. These are common phrases that ordinary Americans use around the dinner table. Or we don't talk about money. Mm-hmm. It is the rare parent, very rare, who number one, got educated themselves about investing, and then number two, decided to teach their children. And so for everybody listening, I don't blame you for not learning about money earlier in life, okay? There's actually very few places that we would learn this. But I will say that it's now your responsibility to create your rich life because nobody's going to do it for you. So when it comes to investing, there's this idea that, well, I'm not rich enough to do those kind of private equity investments and hedge fund stuff. What's really going on here is that Wall Street has intentionally created all these very complicated scenarios and words to get you to invest. Why? Because they want your fees. That's where the most amount of money is generated. And I'm just going to give you one example. A lot of people here have parents who have a financial advisor. Their quote advisor charges them, let's just say 1% per year. Michael, you think that sounds like a lot or not? 1%.
On the surface, no.
Okay. You see where I'm going with this. So, the average person is like, hey, 1%, that's not so bad. Like, I don't want to have to deal with this. This person's an expert. I'll pay him 1%, no big deal. Over the course of your lifetime, if you are paying 1% per year, guess what percentage of your total returns go to this advisor? Most people are going to guess, in my experience, they'll say like 10%, that's fine. 28% of your returns go straight in the pocket of this advisor.
Wow.
If you're paying 2%, that's over 50% of your returns going to this person. You don't need to pay that. It's not like paying somebody to come and clean your house or change your oil. That's a fixed fee. That's $15, $100. This is a percentage. It makes no sense. So the reason that people are scared and nervous and intimidated by investing is number one, there's a lot of scary words and predatory people out there. But honestly, let's get real. Number two, most of these people have never picked up a good book about money. Like, of course I'm scared about squatting 300 if I've never actually squatted one plate. Of course. Similarly, of course you're nervous and scared about money if you've never actually spent one weekend reading a book. So I wanted to demystify it. The irony is, investing is not just for rich people. The way you get rich is by investing. And you can do it even if you have $50 a month. You can start and the money compounds. It grows so fast that you will be surprised at where you end up.
I love it, man. For my sister's graduation present from nursing school, as a result of your book, I started a target date fund for her. And I think that's where we're starting. We're putting $50 in there a month.
Oh my God. That makes me so happy.
Yeah, I'm so pumped about it, man.
I love that. That's what a gift for you to be able to help somebody else do that. And it's amazing because, again, most people, they don't think about this. They're like, I'll deal with this later. And it's actually quite predictable. In their 20s, people go, I don't really care about this. I'm going out and having fun. In their 30s, people go, yeah, I should do something with this 401k thing. I think there's a couple $1,000. I'll deal with it later. And then the minute they turn 40, they wake up, they go, oh shit. They go, I have 2 kids, I have a mortgage, I got to do something about this. And the irony is, if you had saved a little bit earlier on, of course you would have been doing really, really well. It's never too late, but the irony is that you can get much better results by just starting a year or 2 earlier, or certainly 5 or 10. So for everybody listening, don't wait. Tomorrow is never going to change unless you change it. And it's not that hard. It's actually quite simple when you understand how it works.
What are people's biggest objections to your book? What are like the hardest things to swallow or let go of?
Ooh, I mean, the biggest objections it's like the biggest objections to people getting fit are, they 90% of them happen before they ever walk in the door. Mm-hmm. Okay. So for me, it's, I will teach you to be rich sounds like a scam. This guy just got rich by writing a book about getting rich. I'm like, do you understand? I make like $1 per book. I'm certainly not getting rich off this book. Please. Other objections are, I don't want to cut back on lattes. It's like, dude, you're not going to do that. And another one, the biggest objection is just, I'll do that later. Everybody knows that they should do better with their money, but there's no urgency. And what it used to drive me crazy. And in my 20s, I was pretty overbearing, especially my early 20s, because I saw people asking questions about money. And I would just get a little too excited. It's like somebody who they just learned about money or being a vegan, and they need to tell everybody else to become a vegan. It's like, no, you need to keep your mouth shut. And that's what I learned. What I can do better is be a role model. If somebody asks, I can give them a couple of tips. And if they really want to know, then they have to take the responsibility and they can use this material. I think once people get into the book, the most challenging chapter is not what you think. The investing part is actually quite straightforward. I show you how to do it. It's very specific. You know exactly what companies I use and how I invest. The most challenging one is chapter 4, the conscious spending plan. And this is where you decide what's important to you. What do you want to spend more money on? Like eating out is the most popular one. Travel's somewhat popular. But you also decide what you don't care about and what you want to cut back on. For me, I'll tell you some of the things I don't care about. My computer is 7 years old. I have a 7-year-old MacBook Air. I don't have a TV, and I hardly ever eat out. But on the other hand, I see a trainer 4 times a week. I travel. I love to stay at really nice hotels, and I love buying clothes. So I spend a lot of money on those things. But I like that. It's almost like a barbell. You want to have weight on each end. You want to spend a lot on the things you love, but you also want to totally cut back on the things you don't. I guess it's like an unbalanced barbell. Mm-hmm. Actually, you don't want this type of barbell. You'll be totally screwed at the gym. Don't do that analogy, please. But that is a way to think about it, as opposed to, I'm going to try to cut back 3% here and 5% there and 10%. It's like, no, don't do that. Pick the things you love. I'll show you how to spend more on it, but also pick the things you don't and cut back mercilessly on those.
Let's talk about finance in relationships for a minute. Tell me a little bit about how you and your, is it fiance or wife now?
Wife.
So you cut out.
Wife.
Okay. How do you guys approach shared finances? Do you use combined accounts? How does it work in your household?
So this was a big challenge for us getting married. And I wrote about this in chapter 9 of my book because I don't think enough people talk about what's really going on behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked my wife if she was okay with me putting some of the details, and she actually encouraged me to. So we talked about, in the book, I talk about what was the process like to sign a prenup, something that is never talked about in public, ever. And also what it was like to get on the same page with money values. So imagine that you think it makes perfect sense to spend a ton of money on grass-fed beef, but your partner does not. How are you going to have that conversation? And imagine there's a finite amount of money, because there always is. How are you going to decide what is important to you or not?
Mm.
The way that we set up, I talk about the exact questions to ask your partner in this book. And I think it's an amazing way to start getting on the same page with money. You will discover that, just like I did, I thought I was super logical and straightforward. And then when I started talking to my wife, I discovered that a lot of the ways that I look at money were just assumptions, and that it's valid to have my assumption, but totally valid to have hers as well. Here's an example. When she talked about money and what it meant to her, the word that she used was safety. Money makes her feel safe. I did not understand this at all, because to me, money means growth. It means opportunity. It means being able to have freedom to do what I want to do when I want to do. Safety is not even a factor in it. So we were approaching it with totally different invisible scripts. And that revealed some of the reasons that we were disagreeing on where to spend and how to save. I will tell you a little bit about how we set our accounts up.
Before you do that, can I dive in a little further into the example you just gave?
Yeah.
So you're focused on growth and freedom and travel, and she's more on safety. What was the insight or the takeaway from that conversation? Like, how did you come to a conclusion on that?
Oh man. So this was a long journey, I have to say. And I have to also say that it's a journey we continue on.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't get to the root of that until we started going through, we were engaged and we were discussing a prenup, and it was all going well until it wasn't going well. And then we're just like butting heads and we were stuck. And finally she said, you know what, we got to go see somebody, because we got to get some help. And I totally agreed with her. I said, let's do it. So we went. If you're wondering, how do you find a therapist to talk to, which this was the first time I'd ever been to a therapist, we literally went on yelp.com. We're like, therapist. And then we walked over to one and we sat down and she asked us questions. And we started to, over the course of about 3 sessions, we started to talk about money, how we grew up, what does it mean? And with my wife, she wanted to see a certain amount in her account because it made her feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get that, because I have money all over the place in different accounts. I'm like, what? It doesn't make sense to me. But I started to understand it from her perspective. To me, my initial reaction was, okay, if the money is sitting in a checking account, then it's losing these potential returns it could be getting in the stock market.
Right. Very
mathematical, but not really addressing or acknowledging where she was coming from. And I learned, look, there are different ways to look at money. If something makes somebody feel good, even if you're losing a potential tiny return, maybe it's worth it to have that moved into a certain place. So also though, I wanted to talk about how I see money as growth. What does that mean? It means that I don't just want to save money and put it in a savings account. I want to put it in the market and grow it, because that allows us even more security and growth over the long term. So we started to have those discussions, and we talked about it a lot. We talked about how our parents grew up with money, what they taught us. We built a spreadsheet, and ultimately we finally started to say, these are our values. This is what's important to us. Like eating out is not. and we started to put our money where our values were. That's how we work through resolving it. And I cover more of those details in chapter 9.
I love it, man. My wife and I have actually started doing a monthly kind of CFO meeting. We have a personal finance meeting. We go through all of our spending. We go through our balance sheet, everything. And at first, it felt really contrived and uncomfortable. And now it goes really, really quickly. We're on the same page, and we both have more of a sense of security and peace around the whole issue.
Oh my God, that is music to my ears. So, you know what? For everyone listening, like, it can sound a little weird, right? And that's normal for it to sound weird. If you have a partner or somebody that you want to be aligned with on money, I think the first thing to understand is you may never be totally aligned on money. That's okay, right? We all grew up with different perspectives on money. Many of us make different amounts than our partner. So it's natural that you're not going to be totally aligned. But it's important to also be aligned on the big things. Things like, what percentage are you investing? Where are you going to stay when you go on vacation? Is somebody taking care of elderly parents? And I think how you get there might seem weird to other people, like a 1-hour monthly meeting. That's so weird. Are you making our relationship business-like? No, I think it's great. The weirder you do things for you, the better, because it means you were more thoughtful about it. So I think it's awesome. Big congrats to you and your wife.
I appreciate it, man. So my last question for you before we get out of here, what is the best non-financial investment you've made in the past couple of years?
Personal trainer, instant, by far.
Boom.
My trainer holds me accountable. I never miss a session, and I grew up with a lot of respect for my teachers, and I'm a lifelong learner. So I invest heavily in that. In fact, yesterday I had a teacher come to my apartment. I'm working on some posture work, and I just believe that your money is a reflection of your values. And for me, health and aesthetics and learning are really important. And so I want to continue investing heavily in that for the long term.
I love that. Money is a reflection of your values. Money in your calendar.
There you go. Yeah. As I say, show me someone's calendar and their spending, and I will show you their values. That's a bit of a take on another famous quote. If you look at where you're spending your time and your money, you will see what is important to you. And you might not like what you see, and that's okay. You can change it, but that really tells you ultimately what's important to you.
Awesome, man. So guys, if it's not apparent already, I really, really, really want you to go and buy Ramit's book. It's been eye-opening, to say the least, for me. It's been life-changing for me, to employees that I've recommended it to family members, and it is so damn simple. You have nothing to lose. It's like a $15, $20 book, and it can change the rest of your life. Ramit, do you have any other parting words for people?
Just like in fitness, nobody's coming to save you. It's all about what you want to do. And I would love to be able to play a small part in that for anyone who wants to create their rich life.
Thank you, man. Guys, you can find Ramit online. I think you're at Ramit on all of the social media channels, right?
Yep. Instagram, Twitter. You can also sign up for my newsletter at iwillteachyoutoberich.com.
And that's RAMIT at Ramit. Ramit, you're the man. I appreciate you so much, brother.
Thanks so much. This was fun.
This episode is finished, but your training journey continues. Head over to brutestrengthtraining.com/SSW and grab your free pack of 32 accessory workouts that you can incorporate into your training and start improving your strength immediately. That's brutestrengthtraining.com/SSW.